You check your phone, and right there under your best friend's name sits that tiny gray word, delivered. 10 minutes later, it updates to read. You wait for the typing bubble. It never comes. A day bleeds into an entire week of absolute deafening silence from the person who knew your deepest secrets. When we watch a movie, we expect an ending. When a relationship naturally runs its course, we expect a conclusion. These are the anchors that allow us to process change. But when a friend simply vanishes, those anchors disappear. Researcher Pauline Boss calls this ambiguous loss, a state of psychological limbo where the brain is trapped because there is no resolution to grab onto. To understand why this silence feels like a physical weight, we have to look inside an fMRI scanner. A landmark neuroscientific study examined what happens to our nervous system the exact moment we realize we're actively ignored by someone we implicitly trust. Look at scans of the anterior cingulate cortex. This is the specific region of the brain that lights up during an experience of social rejection. This is the exact same region that activates when the body experiences severe physical trauma. Biologically, your nervous system registers this sudden disconnection the exact same way it registers being punched in the stomach. If you have been telling yourself that you are being overly sensitive, stop. Your brain is treating this friendship breakup as a literal bodily injury. When you go through a romantic breakup, the world knows how to handle you. People show up with wine, and you're allowed to mourn. But when your best friend of 10 years suddenly ghosts you, society expects you to show up to work the next morning and be fine. This is disenfranchised grief, a specific type of mourning that society refuses to validate. There are no greeting cards or structured scripts for a platonic heartbreak, because our culture systematically diminishes the value of friendship compared to romantic love. This person held the timeline of your life. They knew your family dynamics and the quiet parts of your heart. When they erase you, they take away a piece of your own history. Because this pain is so often minimized, you are left to grieve in secret. You end up trapped in an isolated loop of self-blame, trying to find a reason for an absence that has no explanation. When you are left in the dark, your brain assumes they acted out of malice, but clinical psychologists have identified 3 specific profiles that explain the silence. The most common is rooted in a paralyzing fear of conflict. The avoidant profile often develops in childhood environments, where expressing heavy emotions was treated as a burden. To them, an honest conversation about a minor disagreement feels like an existential threat. Their nervous system enters an extreme flight response. Ghosting becomes their ultimate survival mechanism. They convince themselves that by quietly fading away, they can avoid facing your disappointment or navigating a messy conversation. Underneath that silence is a desperate attempt to protect their own emotional safety. They did not walk away because you were inadequate. They walked away because the weight of communicating was too heavy for them to carry. In our hyper-connected world, silence is often born from simple exhaustion. The overwhelmed ghoster genuinely values the connection, but operates with a severe lack of emotional bandwidth. This creates a guilt-shame spiral. They intend to reply, but answering a text feels like carrying a boulder up a mountain. As weeks pass, the profound embarrassment of their own delay paralyzes them. They decide they are no longer a good enough person to maintain the friendship and isolate themselves completely. While the overwhelmed ghoster collapses under pressure, there is a more calculated variation, the slow fade. It starts with vague excuses and messages that take 48 hours to get a reply, until you realize you are the only one keeping the connection alive. This gradual withdrawal forces you to question your own perception for months. You spend that time wondering if you are being too needy or paranoid, leaving a psychological scar that is often deeper than a sudden disappearance. Recently, many have started using therapy speech to mask this behavior. They use clinical language like protecting my peace or lacking the capacity as a shield to avoid basic human accountability. A true boundary is a bridge intended to keep a relationship healthy. Using these buzzwords to abruptly abandon a friend is sophisticated cowardice. They frame themselves as the enlightened victim and you as the problem, absolving themselves of the guilt of walking away. The final profile is the most dangerous. For individuals scoring high in narcissism, Machiavellianism, or psychopathy, Silence is not a defense mechanism. These personalities use sudden disappearance as a calculated psychological weapon. They withdraw their presence to punish you or to see if you will beg for their attention. You see this in cruel micro-behaviors. They might leave your emotional message on read, specifically so you know they saw it and chose to ignore it. To the manipulator, your confusion and obsession provide an ego boost. They didn't leave because you meant nothing to them. They left because they knew exactly how much they meant to you, and they weaponized that love to break you. You likely have a burning urge to send a final text, to type out an emotional paragraph demanding an explanation. You want them to acknowledge the pain. But genuine closure requires two people willing to sit in discomfort and take accountability. Reaching out to someone who chose to ghost you is asking for a maturity they have already proven they do not possess. If you reach out to the avoidant, they will block you. Reaching out to the overwhelmed will only trigger a deeper spiral of shame. And if you contact the manipulator, you are handing them the exact power trip they engineered. The act of ghosting you is the ultimate declaration of their emotional immaturity. You cannot extract a mature apology from an unavailable person. The silence itself is the answer. It is the most honest confession they could have given you about their inability to handle a deep connection. Their disappearance is a reflection of their own internal limitations, not your inadequacy. It is a signal that they lacked the tools to navigate the reality of being a friend. You have to stop waiting in an empty room for someone who has already locked the door from the outside. You manufacture your own ending by radically accepting that they removed themselves from your life because they could not offer the bare minimum of respect. This isn't a loss, it is a redirection.